Depending on how you look at Gao, he could be either probably a not very important character in the Final Fantasy VI in general, since he has very little involvement in the story outside his introduction and a side quest here in World of Ruin. But if I was to tell you that Gao is actually one of the most powerful characters you get very early in the game, and once you discover the ins and outs of the Rage and Leap system for this game, Gao quickly comes from becoming not really an important volume party member, but it becomes a very powerful, if not probably the most broken character in the entire game as well. There's a good reason why we say Gao as the last character for these guides. Hey folks, I'm Runner Storm 331, back to doing Final Fantasy VI character guides, and Gao will close off. Will close off as our final entry for the character guides. He's our feral Juggernaut. I know the title still says First Level Mage, but that'll be changed once we get um, once I highlight this a little bit later. But anyway, we're gonna go. We're gonna. This guide's gonna help players get into playing Gao for Final Fantasy VI. This is more aimed for newcomers and beginners alike. So if you do enjoy the content I'm putting out for both my streams on YouTube as well as YouTube, feel feel free to give both my YouTube and Twitch channels subs. They'll definitely help both of those channels grow. And even a follow on my Twitch channel will also help as well. So anyway, we're going to go over Gao's strengths and weaknesses, his recommended level up bonuses, his skills, and of course, recommended in-game equipment options. So without further ado, let's begin. So believe it or not, when you get Gao during a saving scenario, he is arguably, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the more powerful party members you get at the time that he joins up. Gao's initial stats, even though it doesn't reflect it on this, gives him initial stats of the following: a strength of 44, speed of 38, stamina of 36, magic of 34, which is tied with Strong's, by the way, HP gain of 45, and an MP gain of 10. One cool thing about Gao is that outside Shadow, he's actually the second best evader with a very high evasion, and he's actually got the best magic evasion out of the playable cast. So overall, Gao is actually a very, very powerful character you get access to in this once you get him on early in the game. Even though he doesn't appear to be a more reliable party member in terms of story-wise, in gameplay he literally is a virtual Juggernaut, pretty much. So basically, Gao is even though I gush over Gao's abilities, most of it comes down to his initial strengths with his Rage and Leap commands. So Gao does get access to 9 rages in general when you start off with, those being the Silver Lobo, the Hornet, Zagharum, Magitech Armor, Hornet, Excite, Cataraga, and there's probably one or a few more I'm probably missing. So my apologies if I don't have that memorized to T. Oh yeah, I think he has those. Oh no, I don't think he does have Pure Soldier. Never mind. But anyway, he does start off with 9 rages when he joins up. My apologies for sputtering. Not very good at talking. But from there, the player goes back to develop every now and then to pick up new rages for Gao to have. So whenever Gao goes into a rage, not only does he become uncontrollable, but he has either a chance to do a regular attack or the monster's special ability. One thing to keep in mind about Gao's feral youth, it draws inspiration on the Beastmaster job from Final Fantasy V, pretty much. But instead of capturing monsters, Gao learns from them rather than capturing them to use their effects. So basically when Gao uses his Rage command, it basically acts as his Fight command, and it also allows him to have a 50% chance of either doing regular attacks or monster's ability. He also gains any status protection, elemental absorptions, and strengths such as nullifying or having the damage in half. And he also obtains any status elements that the enemy might have initially, or have any elemental weaknesses on them as well. So Rage is actually a double-edged sword most of the time, but you'll be using for the benefits rather than the negatives in general. Uh, Guy will continue to use rages until he gets either KO'd, petrified, or zombified, or get removed. So basically, he'll stay on that. Anything that he gets afflicted with from initial enemy status afflictions that he already has on him, as well as any elemental weaknesses, get removed after the battle ends, except for float. So basically, Rage Axe is his fight command. One cool thing about Gao's regular attack, though, is that he starts off with 109, or in this case 99. It gets reduced to 99 if he equips the shield. And technically, you want to have him wield the shield at all times. So even with 99, that's still a very powerful attack stat that he gets, and that's because he can't equip any weapons. He does have an option of equipping the Imp Halberd, but that's only if he has the he's inflicted with imp status, of course. Now, Gao does have some issues with his defenses in general, but there is a gear that we will talk about a little bit later that makes up for that eventually. So, one thing to get new rages, of course, you will need the leap command. In general, the leap command allows Gao to learn any rage that he leaps on the monsters. So, any monsters he leaps on initially, he'll get those rages. So he can learn anywhere between 1 or 3 rages, depending on the enemies you fight in that formation. And then Gao has a 5 out of 8 chances of reappearing in any fights that occur. Sometimes he'll come right back immediately after he left, and sometimes it just takes him quite a bit of a while. But it takes a 5 out of 8 chances. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is that when he does do leap, Gao will have a hidden be added as the hidden 6-slot enemy in general. Now, enemies have a potential of going up to anywhere between 5 to 6 enemies at most parts, but they only use 3 enemies at a time. So if there are a few occasions and formations where Gao will not appear, and that's sometimes it's due to that 6-slot issue, and that prevents Gao from reappearing sometimes. Sometimes Gao will not reappear if you get into a back attack, surround, or side attack battles. So if you're trying to get Gao back immediately, you probably want to avoid getting into those battles because he will not appear in those instances. Another thing to keep in mind about Leap is that Gao will not be able to use Leap if he's like the only party member and all other party members are KO'd. If you have more than 3 party members on board with a full party of 4, Gao will not appear at all until you have 1 slot open for him to rejoin the party in. So anyway, it would be impossible for me to go over all the rages in general. The one thing to keep in mind is that with access to rages, even before players get access to match sites at Sozo, Gao has the ability to start getting some pretty powerful magic pretty early on, as well as some pretty heavy, strong attacks. So in World of Balance, he actually becomes extremely powerful. Not so much in World of Ruin because, then again, Rage is uncontrollable, which is only one of those half of the reasons. Not to mention he starts getting almost roughly the same attacks. There are some instances where Gao can get something entirely different, and that's being Io's Flare Star or Yojimbo's Shock. But Gao is also a pretty good character to have to help Strago learn lores. Some of them will give him access to lores if you're having difficulty getting Strago to learn those spells in general. So he's also another good character to have. I'm not going to go over which rages you should get because there's guides on the internet as well as on YouTube that will help players out to find out which monsters they can get and which ones they should be recommended to get, depending on stats protection, elemental absorptions, etc. So I won't go over those, but I am going to advise players that if they want to get every rage in the entire game, it's best to find time to do so before you start on the next part of the game. So let's say if you get Gao back and complete the invasion of Narsh, that would be a good time for players to take Gao back to the Veldt and pick up any rages he did not get, as well as the ones that the player encountered more recently in those battles. So in general, tip one is make sure you always find time to go back to the Veld before you start advancing the next major storylines, or when you go look for other party members in the World of Ruin. Uh, my second advice to get new rage is to make sure you encounter every enemy formation of said monsters, because you don't really want to be relying on one monster formation. Many of them will be immobile enemy packs and formations, so you definitely want to take advantage of trying to find those formations and get those monsters out in the Veld. Now, sometimes one enemy will only have one or two enemy formations, so it's very important you find all of them. That makes it a little bit more easier for them to appear in the packs. Another thing I would strongly advise before you start hunting down rages is to always save your game beforehand, because if you're looking for specific monster rages that you have not gotten, but you keep running into the same ones you already have, it's best to do either a regular save or a quick save. And then if you didn't get the one to appear the next one, you can always reload those until it gives you a different monster pack for Guile to leap at. So that can be also another good tip to take full advantage, especially if you're playing on the Pixel Remaster version that I'm using right here. Another thing to keep in mind is that Guile cannot learn every monster rage in the entire game. There are certain enemies and bosses that, most bosses will not appear here, but there are some that do. But there are some enemies that Guile will not be able to learn rages, though there might be certain versions that do let him do that instead. One thing to keep in mind is that even though Proto Armor does have a chance of appearing on the Veld along with 2 Onion Knights, even if Guile does leap on that, he will not get that rage. He cannot get Mega Armor, which is exclusive to the Imperial Palace and the Imperial Base in World Balance. And then, of course, there's also Typhoon and Siegfried for World of Ruin that you fight exclusively in the Colosseum. Those cannot be learned as rages. All overs, which are the Death Warden, which you fight for Saban's best weapon in the entire game, the Tire Things, that will not appear on the Veld either. And certain monsters that appear in chests, like Apparitions and Presenters, they do not appear on the Veld either. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind when you're learning rages. The best time to start getting the new rages is right before you do anything else. So if you get through a major dungeon, it's probably a good idea to take time to go to the Veld and pick up those rages. I mean, it is possible to get every rage in the entire game, but it is not. It's not impossible. It's not possible to get every rage in the entire game. But if you want to prioritize the best ones, I would strongly recommend go to other guides for those, because it would take me forever just to go over which monsters are definitely recommended, because all of them have some good abilities, but technically you want to definitely prioritize monsters that will give you the best attacking abilities, or healing abilities, or buffing or debuffing, or status protection, or the ability to absorb various elements, etc. Those are best recommended for other guides for those. And another monster that you can learn leap on the Veld, but can't really get access to the rage, is the Tomberries. And that's because you fight 3 of them as opposed to 1. So those are actually exclusive monsters to a monster battle fight in the Yeti Cave. Technically, this was meant to help you try to win many of your bustiers on the Veld, but technically you cannot get that rage because that was donated right out, even though you can still see that rage on the rage list in past versions. I did try to learn it here in this file, but as you can definitely see, it's not listed on here. That would have been at the very tail end of it, too. But anyway, that concludes my guide for Gao, the Feral Juggernaut. And if you do enjoy the content that I'm putting out on both my YouTube and my Twitch channels, feel free to give me a follow and sub on both of those channels. Well, sub on the YouTube channel, of course, but definitely helps this channel grow and helps me get encouraged to do more content. I hope these guides help beginners and newcomers alike get into Final Fantasy VI. We do have it right now with the Pixel Remaster, but there's no telling when it'll become available again in the future. So if you haven't played this when it first came out in 1994 like I have, among others, I would strongly recommend getting it, because I know people say Final Fantasy VII is probably the best of the series, but Final Fantasy VI can pretty much has the potential of upending that or even take the cake in some cases. It just really depends on personal opinion from people. But anyway, both games are great, and the Final Fantasy series has been going very strong thanks to both Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy VII. But anyway, that concludes my guide for Gao, and I will see you all later today around 6 or after that for Xenoblade Chronicles X Definite Edition. And I will have these guides highlighted and posted on YouTube, exported to YouTube.